Well, you know what? You may be better off if you just get my voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll get started. First of all, I want to thank you all for having me here this evening. It's an honor. I enjoy going out into the community and doing these things. I do have to apologize, though. I don't have a story about my life that's as exciting as Nicole's. But anyway, just to share with you a little bit about my experiences and where I come from. I was a teacher for 10 years before I became an administrator. Right out of Lock Haven University, I traveled down to Baltimore County Public Schools and taught in a self-contained emotional support classroom for three years down there, right from 2000 to 2003. My dad became ill, moved back to the area while he was ill to work for something called BLAS. And when I left college, I had never heard of what an IU was, what it was all about. So I quickly found out, was contacted by them, and they had asked me to come up. They were starting a residential program in Montgomery, Pennsylvania. Not sure if you're familiar with it. Clear Vision. It's for adjudicated youth. It's females. It's just down the road from Muncie Prison. There's people in Montgomery that the good thing is they don't know it exists. But the next step for these girls was prison. So I taught there, started that program for the IU, taught there for 7 years, went on and got my principal's certificate, and all of a sudden the school districts in the northern tier at this time were looking at the IU or for supervisors to run the school district's special education departments. And I don't know how much you're aware of this, but there's a huge shortage of people with supervisory experience in special education. It's not a job where people are diving to get in the door and go get the certification and move forward. So they were able to emergency certify me with my principal's certificate. Within the year, my first year up there, I went to the University of Pittsburgh online. Within a year, got the special ed supervisory certification away. And then currently I'm a class away, and my goal is, because I get bored with jobs rather quickly, I'm a class away from having my superintendent's letter. So my goal is within 5 years to move in somewhere locally here as a superintendent. I do not work for Montoursville School District. I do provide the leadership for their special ed programs. And a new thing the IU's doing when they brought me on board this year down at Montoursville, another way you may see me involved is I'm also supervising all of the BLAST classrooms, which is currently 7 in the IU, except for my wife's classroom, which is out at Lycoming Valley, Willisott Valley. That's an MDS program. So I have, if your child sits in a classroom other than the one at the Valley, the MDS program, I'm the guy that's kind of overseeing the classrooms. So that's how I fit into the big picture. All right. I don't know how familiar you are. A lot of the school districts around here are going to an instructional model called learning-focused schools. What happens is, just as an aside, and I won't go too far here, you don't make AYP. You read about all the PSSA results in the paper. So as you can see, the bar is going up. More schools are failing. So what they have to do is find out ways in which they can improve the curriculum they deliver. And about 4 years ago, Canton School District was the first one to buy in to stay ahead of the game. And most of the northern tier schools are currently using it. They went to this model. The federal government has approved 5 to 7 models, and the one that a lot of them around here are jumping on is what they're calling, you'll hear them call it LFS, or learning focused schools. And back when you went to school, we had lesson objectives. Today you'll hear them talk about essential questions. Essential question is just the lesson objective. What are we going to do? What are we going to learn? And it's just, like I said, the new age term. So my 2 pieces here is, what I want to do is break down the IEP piece by piece and go over each component. We could spend days doing this. I want you to understand, I want this to be very informal. If you have any questions, fire them away. I'm going to let you know up front, I don't have all the answers, but if there's a question I can't answer, I will go back and use my resources to get us the answer. And then the second thing I want to look at is, the overall plan and the key components of the plan. This is a KWL chart. Take a couple minutes. This is a common tool you'll see used in the classroom with your children. Basically, here's why teachers use this. When we are delivering lessons, we want to know, why are we wasting time on things that kids already know? So before I maybe would start a unit on, let's say, frogs, what I would do is maybe give this chart to every kid. And what we're going to do here first is list as many things here as you can. I'll give you a couple minutes. What you think you already know about IEPs, what you want to know about IEPs, and then kind of at the end, to see if I do my job, you can list 3 or 4 things that you learned. So, and I'll try to hit what you want to know about the IEPs in my presentation. So just take a couple minutes and jot down a couple things that you want to learn about IEPs or questions you may have, and what you already know about them. The K stands for no, W is what I want to know, and L is what I learned.
Eric, we have some
Yes.
parents here today that have not attended an IEP yet, but know they're going to be.
Oh,
So they're
cool.
completely new.
Great.
So they don't really know what all the acronyms, what AYP is, what all the things are.
Thank you, and I'm also very guilty of using.
Me too.
Okay, so I'll take a step back. The AYP, it stands for Adequate Yearly Progress. And in a nutshell, one of the things I do like to do, parents that are out there, if you're ever in an IEP meeting with me, I keep it simple. I try to put it at a level where you're going to understand it, because I can sit and use all this jargon and I'm over your head and I've lost you and you walking out of there about what's going on. Basically, here's what AYP stands for, or what it looks like from a parent's perspective. There are goals. There are a certain percentage of kids that have to pass our state test. And every year, it started out a few years ago back at, I don't know, 50, 55%. They look at reading, they look at math, they look at science. A certain percentage of your kids by grade level have to pass that test. If they do, they say, oh, you've made adequate yearly progress and you just continue on with school, life's good. If you don't, then you'll hear them talking about this school's in warning status, this school's in school improvement status, this school, the state's going to come in and kind of do their own thing. If you fail consecutive years, you need to take these steps to figure out how you're going to improve to get off that warning list. Every year that you, and there's like 5 levels, every year that you make what we call AYP, if you're, let's say 2 years you don't, the 3rd year you make it, they bump you up a level. And it's what you'll hear in the news them talking about. That's how they're determining whether we have these failing schools. They use that AYP. And there are all sorts of opinions out there because it's based on this one test that these kids are taking, and that's how they're determining whether schools are adequate or not. Interesting side note, I don't know if it's true, I got an email this week from PSBA, and supposedly they're using a different formula. I don't know if this is true, you might want to look, for charter schools because they're all failing. And the rumor is that what they do is they look at grade spans too, 3rd to 5th, 6th to 8th, and 11th. As long as one of those grades in a charter school reaches the percentage, they're saying, oh, you've made AYP. Well, that's a different rule book than what public schools are being held to. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it came across my desk this week.
That 4-letter acronym you just used,
Oh,
PS.
PSBA, Pennsylvania School Board Association.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, do stop me because yep.
And I have a question. Did the adequate yearly progress, did that exist prior to No Child Left Behind, or is that part of the No Child Left Behind standards?
I'm pretty sure it did not exist. It's the measuring tool. By 2014, you have to be at 100%. Now here's another tricky thing that the public doesn't always know, and I don't want to get too far off on this away from the IEP. You have subgroups of kids. So you look at grade levels, and then you have subgroups. And the 2 big subgroups are special education and economically disadvantaged. So for those of you that are from around here, I'll just use my district. My district, who's one of the top in the state, in Montoursville, they're in the top. If you look at our data that they just released it to us, and almost every grade level we're in the top, every test, top 100 out of the 500 school districts, every grade level, every subject. In the IU, we don't drop below 5th. We're 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th, every grade level, every subject. in our district. Now, what the state, those two subgroups, you have to hit what they call an N number of 40. What does that mean? From grades, in those grade spans, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 11. If you have 40 special education kids or more, you have a subgroup. So, hypothetically speaking, the whole grade level could make adequate yearly progress, but when you look at those 40 kids in the special education you don't make it. Wait, smaller districts, like Canton, one of my jobs was you got to look at things, and we try to keep it under the 40, because if it's under the 40, the state never looks at it. So you don't have what they call a subgroup. Now, there are multiple ways to make AYP. Safe, and I don't know how they're all mathematical formulas, but you have safe harbor, confidence interval, just passing the test. I mean, that's above my head, and that's for curriculum directors to figure out. But okay, does anybody want to share a thing or two that they already know about an IEP, or think they know about an IEP?
I wrote down the goals that are set for in his class and the goals for therapy, and then they also have in it where he's at and
Yep.
what he's doing.
Very good. That's good stuff. Good. Anybody else?
They're specific to each child.
Yeah. Very good. Good. How about something you want to know? Oh, good. I'm done then.
Why do they change them every year? I feel like the IEPs, the layouts change all the time, so that they're so hard to understand.
The physical layout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where things go on the
Yep.
IEP.
Okay. I'll get into that eventually. And if I don't, you remind me.
How do the IEPs, once you hit school age, differ from the IEPs that you get from early intervention from preschool, 3 to 5?
I will not be able to answer that question because I don't have an EI IEP here yet. I do see them when they transition in through early intervention. I don't think there's much of a difference, but I'm sure we could get an EI. If you go to Patan, I'm sure you can get an EI IEP.
Well, I have my kids one, but I'm curious to see.
Oh, and you'll be able to see. Yeah. Okay, good. I don't have internet access, but when you get a chance, go to YouTube and type in 212 degrees. It's a very motivational video. I show it to all my teachers. I showed it to them on Montoursville this year. I showed it last year in Canton, but just some interesting facts about the world that we live in and how fast-paced it is, and just a very motivational video. So I apologize, I don't have that available, but it's a great video. Now I cheated because I didn't put all the, you have a handout, I guess we'll call this an orange salmon colored,
Yep.
of acronyms. Okay, I put up here what I thought were the common acronyms. The most common that you're going to hear in an IEP meeting or as you're working with kids with disabilities. I could spend a night going over every one of these, more than a night, hours going over all of the acronyms. A couple I do want to bring to your attention. MHID used to be MHMR. All right, MHMR, mental health, mental retardation. With Rose's Law, it's now become intellectual disabilities and not mental retardation. The state hasn't officially changed that, by the way. It still comes up, I believe, as, I don't think they've made an official release of changing from member. I'm trying to think of the DARTS template that we use. If it's made the change, I'm not sure. NORAP, that's an important one. Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. That's going to be different depending on the district that you're in. First of all, I'm going to brag a little bit about the IU. Now that we're in two, we've pretty much taken over the northern tier except for Athens, and we were in Wyalusing and we're out of Wyalusing. So in Bradford County, we're not over in Tioga very much. One of the nice things, I believe, in my opinion, for having us involved is we have, as a supervisory staff, we're very good about bouncing thoughts off one another. So if I have a question, I'll call my cohort in Athens, or I'll say, hey, how'd you handle this in Canton, or what are you doing over at East Lycoming? Because what I'm not going to get myself in is a pickle with a parent because I don't know what's going on. And I believe that's important. From my side of things, relationships gets destroyed with parents because I think there are some supervisors out there that will take advantage of the fact that you don't know what's going on. And that's unfortunate, it's unprofessional in my opinion, and not ethical. But I hear stories all the time about it happening, and rather than research and dig and do a little work, and it may cost you a few extra dollars, they'll try to find the easy way around. So one thing I like to do is offer parents options, or say, look, here are the 3 roads we could go down depending what happens. We have meetings every month, we get updates of what's going on at the state level, everything like that, so I think it's great. We've actually, the IU has teamed up with Bloomsburg University, and now all the local districts and IU employees have the opportunity to get this supervisory certification through Bloom U, which I think is very good. ID used to be MR, that's intellectual disability. ESY is something you're going to see in the IEP extended school year. Please understand that's not summer school, and it's important that they're telling you that it's not summer school. FBA, functional behavior assessment. RTII, I've jumped on that. That's not so much a special ed one. That's an initiative, and I'm biased to it now that I'm in Montoursville because they're one of the 4 school districts in the state that are approved to use it, and it's the main reason I think we have a top quality program down there. It's called Response to Instruction and Intervention. It used to be known as RTI. It used to just be a response to instruction. Now they put the 2 I's. Here's why I love it. In most of the school districts around here, you're going to sit in Mrs. Jones's 3rd grade classroom, and if you're not making it in Mrs. Jones' classroom, then we start looking at throwing services at you right away. If you're a lucky school district, you may have what they call a title classroom. That's kind of the tweener classroom between the 3rd grade class, and if it's a kid with a learning disability, the title class is where we go before we look to throw them into special education. RTII, it's expensive. It's not cheap because it takes a lot of manpower. Instead of just having that one area, that title support, RTII is tiered. So you have tier 1 in the classroom, tier 2, tier 3, then special education. And it's prescribed interventions that need to go on for 6 to 8 weeks. So in my opinion, till I get them in my desk, we've tried and exhausted everything there is out there. And when you look at our numbers, we're probably getting the true kids. With some of the kids that may come up as having disabilities in other districts may only be a tier 2 or tier 3 kid in our district. Now, if they come to me from Williamsport High School as a student with a learning disability, I need to recognize that, and I can't put them in a tiered approach. I got to honor the IEP and move forward. But we found it to be very, very effective program. And it started as when you identify a child with a specific learning disability, there's 2 ways to do it. The discrepancy model and this response to intervention model. Loyalsock Valley is approved by the state. The gentleman that started this initiative comes up about every year or 2 just to check the program out. It's running in both elementary schools in Montoursville and the middle school.
Eric?
Yes.
Could I ask you to just touch on FAPE and LRE, please?
Sure.
Because LREs tends to be a lot more important to parents, I think, than districts realize.
Yes. LRA stands for Least Restrictive Environment, and when we make decisions on providing services to students, we need to always start with the least restrictive environment in mind. The least restrictive environment that any child in the community can be in is Mrs. Jones's 3rd grade class. That's where it all starts. We can't randomly pick kiddos and throw them into different classrooms. So we start in the 3rd grade classroom, and we have to throw the boat at the child and then be unsuccessful before we can look to change the placement. Where we get in trouble with that with parents a lot of times is there are some parents that feel we as districts didn't do enough. And we're ready to move them right away. My job as a leader of the department is, I know that, so I'm very tough on my teachers, and I make them collect data, because when you come into my IEP meeting and I have graphs and charts showing that your child's not making progress, that's not an opinion. That's factual data that we've collected based on what's going on in the classroom. So least restrictive environment always starts in the regular education classroom. The big thing from the Gaskins decision was we need to use supplementary aids and services and try all of them in the regular education classroom before we look to place them in extra support classes. And what's come out of the Gaskins decision this Supplementary Aids and Services Toolkit, which I noticed, is that back there? That's an important tool that we look at to make sure we've tried every option that we have. Okay?
And can you just explain FAPE?
The best that I can do for FAPE, free, appropriate public education. Every child has a right. I can't stop your child from coming into my public school. He could be the worst behaved kid in the world, and he has the right to free and appropriate public education. And some placements that I may offer to your child that's out of hand, here's another thing you need to understand too. You need to agree to. And there are programs that I can't force upon you, but I will make recommendations for you to go there. And I'm thinking of like a partial hospitalization program. And that's a program that we maybe would put. And I don't like that term because right away you think hospital, and it's not that. It's just a combination in simple terms of academics and behavior and counseling that goes on in between. And like anything else, there's good partial programs and there's not so good partial programs, just like there's what the state calls good schools and not so good schools. So that's just the nature of the world that we live in. That's where most of your court cases in the state of Pennsylvania are, folks, FAPE and LRE. And we're aware of that, and which is why one of the things that I do, not to be sneaky, you'll see those terms quite a bit in NORUPs that I write. If I'm dealing with a complex case, because when you sign off on that NORUP, that Notice of Recommended Educational Placement, you're checking a box that says, I agree with this recommendation, you're signing and dating, so when you say, look, he threw him in this program and I didn't agree to it, as long as that's written strong, that's the legal stance I can take. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so you're eligible for services now. What the IEP has 30. The IEP team has. Well, let me take a step back. There's different ways that we can get into this IEP. Parents can request it. I can't deny it once you request it. What I will do a lot of times is call the parent when they write it to make sure they know what they're asking for. For example, I had a very interesting letter this week come across my desk. Parent visits a doctor in Geisinger, uses the words in the letter, learning disability, uses the words seizure, and I forget what the third word was, but red flag came up to me right away because when I see learning disabilities, I'm thinking in IDEA or IDEIA world, special education. When I see seizures, now I'm in 504 world, which we'll save for a different night. One's a regular education initiative through the American with Disabilities Act. And special ed coordinators, by the way, in most districts are also in charge of those kids too. And IDEA is the special ed world. So I made numerous attempts, and we're still playing phone tag with the parent, but I want to make sure sometimes doctors or parents' interpretations of what doctors are saying, I mean, I don't know what she's looking for here, and then I got to determine, okay, is this a health condition? Because if it is, I'm probably going to look 504, or could look other health impairment. Or is it something that the doctor thinks that there's a learning disability with? So, but when I get that letter, right away I will issue a permission to conduct an initial evaluation on a child.
Really quick question about 504s and IEPs.
Yeah.
A 504, so you said the aim of a 504 is to keep a child who has a disability in a regular classroom, and is that what?
No.
See, I don't understand the difference. They keep throwing that at me, and I don't understand.
Yep. All right. And 504s let me just give you the history of 504s. They became popular, I think, since first Desert Storm. Basically, here was the deal. All these, I hate to use this term, but all these folks that were normal go over into the battlefield, they come back with all sorts of problems. President Bush at the time was like, look, we need to help these people. We need some support. So what he had done through the Americans with Disability Act is to get help under 504, you need to have a substantially limiting condition that affects a major life function. And there's a list of terms that fall under a major life function. It's an unfunded mandate. Most people don't know that, meaning we're not getting any money for this 504 stuff. So, for example, 504s could be like cystic fibrosis, diabetes, peanut allergy, things along those lines. And basically, for me to, if you're familiar with an IEP, basically you're just covering SDIs in a 504 plan. You got to prove that it interferes with the child's education, and that there's a set of accommodations and who's responsible for those accommodations. Where it gets tricky is you can have an IEP and a 504 plan. they can, if you know what a Venn diagram is, those two paths can cross. It can even get more tricky. You can be gifted with an IEP and a 504 plan. The gifted emotional support student with the peanut allergy. They exist.
Sorry.
It will all be found in the IEP though. If it's rather than running 3 documents, you throw it all together in this IEP. Okay? Chapter, the special education chapter, I always get them confused, 14, gifted 16, trumps everything.
So is a 504 more like on a medical side?
Usually.
Is there a goal for a 504 or just a list of accommodations?
No, and there's no regulation that says I need to meet with you on an, I do, but I'm telling you they're not all doing it. There's nothing that says I need to meet with you to discuss this plan. Here's what happens a lot of times in school districts. We forget to pass them from grade level to grade level. You know, so you have the meeting at the beginning of the year. They're a 5 or 10 minute meeting is all it is. You go in, 2-page document. Here's the blurb that says I can justify medically that this kid has a problem. I have a rating scale of some sort. I check off the rating scale that it's either substantially limited, and then we write the accommodations in the 504 plan, things that they're going to need, like for a diabetic, the whole. The nurse is very helpful in that. The other thing, the other area too, and I don't know if you're aware of this, the kid that needs OT, occupational therapy, but doesn't have a need for other special education services. That's also a 504 plan. Kid has poor handwriting. Okay, so that also can become part of a 504 plan. You don't need to, but a lot of times what we'll ask for is doctor scripts. And don't think because your child has poor handwriting that they're going to qualify for occupational therapy. So yes, if you ever get the chance, the gentleman you want to look up for 504 plans is Perry Zirkle from Lehigh University. He's got a conference every May. You want to leave somewhere with your head spinning? It's really cool though. It's 2 lawyers, basically. You sit in these sessions, and one shows you how they're going to fight this side of the case, one shows you're going to fight this side of the case. And as school districts, we cringe because we're like, okay, you know what, no matter how we fight this, they're coming at us, you know, how are you going to justify the other side? But Lehigh, yeah, he's known around the world, or around the country, for 504 plans, Perry Zirkle. IEP is a written statement of educational programs designed to meet each individual's needs. That's what the I stands for. Individualized Education Plan. If you have an IEP, you receive services, but please understand, you can have a disability and not have an IEP. If we're doing a good job, we don't see this enough, because a lot of times, a lot of times parents see this as a safety net, and I get that. But sometimes there are kids where we do our job, we get them at grade level, they have a reading disability, we'll say, we get them at grade level, we reevaluate, we meet the goals in the IEP, we reevaluate them because that's what the law says we have to do in order to dismiss the services. We reevaluate them, we feel the data shows that they're ready to go, and now you got to make that presentation to the parent and they're like, oh my word, you're going to take these services away from my kid and he's finally doing well? Yeah, that's what we want to do. It doesn't happen that often because parents get nervous about that. But I always tell them, the door never completely shuts. Okay? We can come back and within a year, 9 months, look at a reevaluation. And yeah, it takes time, but know that that's an option. Big thing I'm seeing lately, I had 3 of them in 2 weeks. Dyslexia does not qualify you for an IEP or a learning disability. And schools can't do anything about diagnosing dyslexia. That's a medical doctor. All right? That's not school psychologists. And you can go to the medical doctor and he can give me a nice little report that says Janie has dyslexia, and I may look at it, have my school psychologist look at it, and if we're not noticing it, the big thing that has to happen here, it's got to interfere with the education. If it's not, then we're not going to do anything about it. The perception sometimes by parents is, I've been telling the school since 2nd grade that my kid has this problem, and here it is 5th grade, and they're finally going to address it. And that's typical of parents. You hear that a lot with parents of other health impairment or learning disabilities. Remember, I told you there's 2 ways to diagnose a learning disability, and one of them is the discrepancy model. And if you're not running the RTII, response to instruction and intervention, you're stuck using the discrepancy model. What does the discrepancy model mean? Your academic achievement and your ability level, there needs to be a gap of a certain degree. At 2nd grade, that gap may only be here. And so we're going to say, sorry about your luck based on the data we collected. there's not a severe enough discrepancy. Third grade, you say, I want to test it again, all right, we're here.